Well, no shortage of drama here. Week 9, Colts, Vikings. I can't believe I actually led off with that. Colts, Vikings. Yeah, I think that really is dominating the storylines here. Anthony Richardson benched Joe Flacco, the starter, I guess, going forward. Not a one-week benching, according to Shane Steichen this week. Eddie Garrison, as much as I'd like to, flirt with you here at the start, there's no need for that. We just need to get into it here on this Wednesday afternoon. Obligation to the 53-man roster. I believe that was a phrase that Shane Steichen uttered today. They're sitting at 500, a lot of football left. Feels like Joe Flacco gives them the best chance to win. And I think as soon as Steichen said that, I just sat there and thought to myself, this is what is so messy about the Colts organization right now. I think on a couple of occasions you and I have said here over the past few weeks, this is one of the more awkward states for the fan base and the franchise. Does Shane Steichen have more of an obligation to the 53-man roster or to the franchise? And I think that is really difficult. Like, if winning now was his true ultimate goal, then why no outside moves in free agency and sitting on cap space? Why no every draft pick is going to go to a win-now position and not necessarily look down the road? I mean, hell, if you feel that way about win now, why wasn't Flacco the starter week 1 versus living through inevitable growing pains that Anthony Richardson was going to have? So that, I think, is just the difficult nature to where the 2024 Colts lie. Does this all of a sudden mean they're going to be aggressive at the trade deadline on Tuesday? I guess we'll wait and see on that end. But I don't know. I walked away from today, and I think if I were a Colts fan, I don't know what I would find super encouraging. Anthony Richardson says he doesn't know why he was benched. This sounds like it's going to be an extension of a 1-week thing. Like, this is not a 1-2 week thing.
Anthony sure as hell didn't know that, because he was like, yeah, it always sucks knowing we are not the starting quarterback for the upcoming week.
Yeah, again, he said that, and then Shane Steichen said, this is the plan for the rest of the season. And basically, I think to just kind of summarize it is, when Shane is asked, will Anthony Richardson start again for the franchise, and says something along the lines of, I can't predict the future. You don't suffer through 2022 for that. Like, you don't go through the pains and the Band-Aids and the old and the boring and the bad to all of a sudden no longer have a plan, or the plan is a 39-year-old quarterback here for 2 months, and then we'll see what happens in September 2025. So, it's just wild. They say the tap out had nothing to do with it. I don't know if I believe that, to be fully honest. I asked Shane specifically about Anthony's work ethic. I don't know. I think you could probably read a little bit into that answer. Is there something a little bit more on that end? Because, again, it's such a 180, Eddie, from what they have said. Yeah. And so that's where I think you get into this, where is kind of some of the gray area on it. And, people say, hey, this is accountability. Well, define accountability. I'd argue accountability at the top of the organization has been pretty waning, when you can call your GM a blue chip GM and Michael Jordan misses shots, and you call your head coach Don Shula. Where was accountability when Nick Foles is convulsing on the field in MetLife and your offensive line just, chugs back to the sideline there? It's just, that's where I struggle with this sort of decision. And I'm half joking, half serious with this. I think I'm speaking to both sides of the aisle when I say this. If you believe in Anthony Richardson, I think you should continue to play. I think you should continue to be in these unscripted moments that are impossible to simulate in practice. Joe Flacco said it today. I go from no reps to all the reps, comparing the backup. I think there's this huge misconception on what an NFL practice is like. The backup does not get reps, period. And so that, I think, has to be taken into consideration of now Richardson is not getting that. And if you are hey, Anthony Richardson sucks, he's done, I don't want to ever see him again, well, then continue to play him, and then hopefully you'll lose more games than you will with Flacco, and you'll get a higher draft pick, to be honest with you. So,
can I follow up on your first statement?
Yeah, sorry. I'm kind of rambling here.
It's okay. I started to question, I don't know why, but I just started to question really like the behind-the-scenes stuff with Richardson. Is he watching the film? Like, is he watching enough film? Is he the first guy in, the last guy out? That kind of moniker, or that typical catchphrase you hear about NFL quarterbacks. And today I hear Joe Flacco talk about, this is a good time for Anthony to, step back away from the situation and kind of just evaluate things. And then I hear Shane Steichen use the word professional, and I hear other players kind of say the same thing along those same lines. And then you have the subbing out play on Sunday. If there were already guys that were starting to not believe in him going forward because of his lack of preparation, and then he subs out of the game, their version of him quitting on the team, and you want to say, well, you have to play him. How can you go out there and play him if guys, maybe offensive linemen, aren't backing him, and now they're taking plays off, and it's only going to hurt him that way as well. So it's a lose-lose situation if that's the case, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to summarize it. When Shane Steichen says the words professional on several occasions today, when he says the little things, in a way, is he saying Anthony is not meeting the quarterback standard. However you want to define that. Monday through Saturday quarterback standard. I thought Sunday had a lot of immaturity from him, both on and off the field, with his actions on it, and then post-game as well. I think we probably should point to that as a thing that needs work. But no matter how you look at it, 10 starts in, pulling the plug. There's no past precedent in NFL history of guys coming back to that franchise and finding success. And I think that's a difficult nature to it. And in a way, I almost view this as you're just delaying the Anthony Richardson clarity on him as a football player, and you're extending the leash of Chris Ballard by this move. Because Flacco plays out these final 2 months. Now you get to next season. I assume Richardson's the starter. You're going to talk about an awkward offseason for Richardson. I guess he would start.
Right.
Well, then do we just chalk next year up to, hey, these are new moments for him. It's his 4th career road start. It's, all these, oh boy, he's never played in the second half of an NFL season. December football, he has no idea what that is. So then does that mean you pick up his 5th-year option after that, and then he goes into 2026 and plays? The plan that Ballard, Irsay, and Steichen were unanimous on has blown up. I think we all can agree on that. It was all, and you play him, you play him, you play him. I got some pushback certainly from last night, and I mentioned in my story, and I tweeted out the side-by-side of Richardson to Josh Allen through their first, Allen, he played that full rookie season. He did miss a month due to injury, but he played 12 games. Richardson, you got to combine the two, and he's played 10 so far. It's eerie how similar the stats are, and I don't think it's low-hanging fruit to pick out Josh Allen. And why is that? Because when the draft pick was made, that to me was the modern-day comp. Size, style, and college resume. The college resume, frankly, no one is Richardson. But
Trey
Allen...
Lance.
Say it again.
Trey Lance,
probably the closest. But again, Trey Lance didn't even play that last year. That was that weird COVID year where he plays one game. So it's just even that one, nobody's close. I guess Lance and again, Allen played 2 years and didn't have great success, of course. Again, Trey Lance's touchdown to INT ratio was filthy at North Dakota State. So there's just not a lot of it. So I look at Allen and say, okay, that career arc. And that's why I don't think it's low-hanging fruit to watch Buffalo. And it's almost like Jim Irsay should have invited 60,000 into Lucas Oil Stadium some random July night and said, hey, let's all come together and watch Josh Allen's rookie year. We're going to put it up on the Jumbotrons. We're all going to live it. We're all going to watch it. We're all going to hear what social media look like during those plays and those games. And, how much did Bills fans want to be done with him? Or how much did Bills fans have patience with him? I think that almost would have been a healthy exercise. And, again, it's pretty eerie to look at how similar the stats are. And I'm of the belief that growing in the lab is easier than growing by reading a book when it comes to playing quarterback in the NFL. So that's why I've been such a believer of I don't know what you get out of starting Flacco in terms of helping out your franchise and trying to create sustained success. If you look at the next month, Eddie, his first ever primetime game, Sunday Night Football, the most blitzing pressure defense coordinator in the entire NFL.
Yep.
What an opportunity. Next week, Josh Allen, ironically, the comp in your own building. The next week, Sunday Night Football again in the Big Apple against a Hall of Fame quarterback. The next week, arguably the best team in the NFL, and Man Campbell in your own building. I mean, you want to talk about great unscripted moments to grow, to have success, to fail, to experience. All those things are true.
Yeah.
I think I said it to you on Monday. I thought Sunday was arguably the best experience-driven game he's had.
Yep.
In these late half moments and seeing D'Amico Ryans for a second time in his season and the late game moments. And again, it was a lot of failure, but that's exactly what you want him to get. And now he goes back to running the scout team. And like that just, it can't be simulated, replicated, any of it. And I don't know, maybe there is some look in the mirror moment, but it would be unprecedented in the NFL for all of a sudden some resurrection to happen, or however you want to describe it. The more I thought about the tap out, the more I did think Jim Irsay was probably really, really embarrassed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't get that off my mind, to be honest with you. Eddie, think back on the last week for Irsay. He's got all his boys in the building for the Ring of Honor game.
Yep. Biggest
divisional game his team has had. They lose. His quarterback, to a lot of football people, did an embarrassing act in tapping out of the game. Irsay doesn't want to be embarrassed. That had to have rubbed him the wrong way.
You're on national television.
Now you're on national television Sunday night. So again, and what did Shane Second say when asked about Irsay? We had conversations, but this is my decision, et cetera, et cetera. Conversations with the leadership council. This is my decision.
Do you find his statement of saying that I don't speak for our team odd?
It's a little odd. Again, I don't think Shane is necessarily built to be the best politician up there in that setting. So I'm not going to rip the words too much, but it's just again, it is awkward, Eddie, and like, we're now making a win now move. Well, could you walk me through the last 9 months and show me where these other win now moves were? Because I'm not seeing many of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I just don't agree with. And there's no way for me to say this without it coming as a shot at Joe Flacco, but I think there's a misconception on what Joe Flacco could all of a sudden ignite or bring.
Mm-hmm.
In that, Joe Flacco is 8-16 in his last 24 starts. He has one winning season in the last 7 years. If you look at that was Cleveland last year. He walked into a 7-4 football team with the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL. He's not walking into a 7-4 football team with the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL. We've watched this movie, and I've said that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We've watched this movie with a different lead actor. And this lead actor, Matty Bone, I know is a big fan of the looks of Joe Flacco, maybe one of the more attractive options here. But nonetheless, I just don't know where it gets you. And I get there are some fans that sit there and pay hard-earned money for season tickets, and they just want to see wins. That's fine. I am of the belief that sustained success in a 5 to 7 year window is what you're trying to create.
Right.
You look at the AFC Championship quarterbacks, Eddie, over the last 4 or 5 years. You don't see Band-Aids in there.
Nope.
You see Mahomes, Lamar, Burrow, Allen, and I'd argue the kid in Houston's knocking on the door. Those are drafted quarterbacks by those teams.
Davis Mills.
That have grown within those organizations, and a lot of them have had rookie contract success.
Yeah.
Too. That is the path and the route that you have to take. And I sit here on October 30th and think, what is the plan at the most important position in sports? And once again, it is majorly up in the air. And it's been up in the air for a while with this franchise. Obviously, the Richardson draft pick, that was a plan. But 2022, you had uncertainty. 2021, you had it. 2020, you had it. 2019, you had it. Again, Band-Aid, Band-Aid, Band-Aid. To me, that's accepting mediocrity too easy. Going Band-Aid's the easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
Swinging and risking is hard. But to achieve the top of the mountain, you've got to do hard things. Kansas City's got to do what? Trade up. Buffalo's got to do what? Trade up twice. Baltimore's got to say, hey, Joe Flacco, we're going to take this kid with the 32nd overall pick. And it might be the end of you.
Right.
But so be it. These organizations, they do hard. Houston, trading up with Will Anderson too. That was a big deal what they did there at 2 and 3 last cycle. So it's just hard for me to look at the Richardson decision right now and say, where is the growth? I didn't hear that a lot today of like, this is the plan in place. This is where we feel like he's going to get better. I mean, hell, Richardson doesn't even know why he got benched if you want to take him at his word. So organizationally, I just think it's a bit of a failure.
We had Joel Erickson on Query and Company today with Jimmy Cook and I, and Joel lobbied out this idea that what if this perceived notion that Shane Steichen's trying to turn Anthony into a drop-back quarterback, which he kind of is, and wanting to just throw the ball down the field all the time and this and that and the other, when in reality it's Anthony just sitting into the pocket and trying to wait for those long routes to develop and wait and wait and wait, and then he has to make a last-second throw where nobody's open instead of checking it down to whether that's Jonathan Taylor or one of the tight ends or Josh Downs over the middle of the field. And this is him, Shane or Chris Ballard or whomever, saying, hey, man, you clearly were not ready. You still aren't ready. We need you to sit back. We need you to learn this offense and learn how to make quicker decisions when something's not there.
Yeah, maybe that is indeed a big part of it. I thought this was a moment, Eddie, to kind of face adversity in the mirror. And, all right, let's all get on the same page here. Anthony, if I'm Shane Steichen, Anthony, I'm not helping you out. We're going to get the ball out quick. We're going to have a very concerted effort in that. I know you have this great arm, and sure, we'll sprinkle in a shot or two, but we can't live in the vertical passing game or bust nature that we've lived in. Like, I kind of looked at it as instead of running at the sign of adversity, facing it would be the better option against, again, super exotic defense.
Yes.
Prime time. All of these things that you just can't get. I'll go back to what I said earlier. Anthony Richardson is going to do hardly anything in practice moving forward. I mean, that's just the reality of it. These backup quarterbacks, they don't do anything in practice. So are you just going to delay this further of Flacco for 2 months? We'll see if the ceiling becomes a wild card team or whatever it becomes. And then all of a sudden in September 2025, where are you? Like, you don't go through Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, Sam Ehlinger, Jim Irsay hiring Jeff Saturday, the most embarrassing collapse in NFL history, to trot out a 39-year-old for the final 2 months of the season. It's just I thought it was just kind of another reminder of the mishandling of that position over the last 5 years. Which, again, Ballard, asked him at the Combine earlier this year, why haven't you had the success? Why has there been no division title and one playoff win? And I thought he was a very candid answer of like, not getting quarterback right. Well, in a way, this is another admittance of that.
Yep.
Of the plan that we originally thought is not happening any longer. And again, in NFL history, find me good examples of young QB starting for team, gets benched, comes back onto said team, and finds success.
It doesn't happen.
We had Joel Erickson on. You brought him up earlier this week. The two names he mentioned were Alex Smith and Rex Grossman. First off, Rex Grossman, I don't know if he wants to get into free to like Bloomington South games moving forward, but I was like, wait, what? And Alex Smith, for what it's worth, it took a new head coach. And, obviously that it isn't there. So, I don't know, man. It's, I'm rambling a bit. I want to get to Twitter questions, but here we are. Here we are with more indecision at that position, and like there's been really since Andrew Luck hung it up in August of 2019. Anything else on your end that you'd like to mention before we get to Twitter questions?
No, I want to try to get in as many of these as we can. My opinion, it does not matter. It's all yours. So let's dive into them. We got a lot to get to, starting with Cole. Kevin, who do you think is ultimately making this decision to bench Richardson?
Yeah, I'm going to take Shane at his word, but I think he's listening to a lot of parties. And let's go through the parties. Do I think a lot of people in that locker room were frustrated by the tapping out? Yes. I thought Flacco used the right phrase for it today. He was like, I don't think it's malicious. I mean, like, but I get, when you wear the C on the chest and you're a quarterback of an NFL franchise, you're not the student body president at Cecina High School here. You're the president of the United States. And so there is a standard there. And we know what Ballard thinks of the locker room. We know what Irsay thinks of embarrassment and things like that. So, were there some yellow flags and this was another one? I could see that. And then listening to Irsay and listening to the locker room and maybe listening to Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen has reached that sort of conclusion here. But I can probably talk myself into a lot, but I will go with Shane did make the ultimate decision, but certainly some very important people had his ear.
Blopa states there's a lot of drama going on when, in reality, it is right in front of our eyes. A quarterback who has physical condition problems cannot play in the NFL. You have to find out what is happening with this issue and solve it. A QB who does not master the unwritten rules of his position cannot play in the NFL. You have to be sure that he learns them. Jim Irsay is simply demanding that the quarterback is able to meet the basic standards of the position until Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are not sure that he is ready. He will be on the bench.
I think it's a fair statement. I think it's a fair question. I guess I'll answer it with the question, how do you learn to play the position? Do you need to be in the lab or do you need to read the book? We're all different learners. Certainly you can cite examples of quarterbacks that have sat and have watched and that has worked out. You can definitely cite examples on the flip side of it. I was always in favor of when you have as little experience as he has, he's got to get these moments. And he's got to experience it. The
unfortunate part, though, is that's not what the NFL is.
Well, the NFL can be that if we're all on the same patient page. Mm-hmm. And this what gets into the awkward nature of the franchise, Eddie. When you haven't won a division title in 10 years, when you're in your worst playoff drought in 30 years, patience gets tested quickly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes all of this just weird.
It's very flawed on the roster construction standpoint because you've got all these guys that are on their second contracts.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then you've got this rookie QB who has no experience. It doesn't add up.
So what is the plan? The plan is for Richardson to sit there and watch. Joe Flacco, and I don't want this to sound like a rip of Joe Flacco, and I didn't think Gardner Minshew fit this bill either. Joe Flacco is not some human that's putting his arm around Anthony Richardson and said, "Come here, buddy. Learn here. Come over to my house for an hour and let's talk." That's not how Flacco's wired. And Flacco hasn't been through this. Baltimore gave him the keys day one. Flacco said it today. I would not react well at Richardson's age to this sort of benching. So it can sound like a double standard because, when you're drafted 4th overall, there's a level of you've earned it. But certainly, and Jeff Saturday I thought had a decent quote of, tolerance comes with success. But playing that position is just difficult. Mm-hmm. Again, Peyton Manning's 3-13 in his first season. You've had guys that have struggled. I think Stafford had a really poor start to his career, and you saw how that turned out. So I guess my general thought now to Blopa's question is this: what's the plan? Do you feel like this is a wake-up call for Richardson to make the professional gross he needs to off the field? What about the fundamental issue of accuracy on the field? Mm-hmm. What about 50 seconds to go in a game and you're scrambling for your life and you need to get out of bounds? What about 3rd and 3 and you've had one of the worst halves of your career? Can you swallow your pride and not try to fit that ball into Josh Downs? How much of that can be learned in a meeting room? How much of that? Because the Colts are going against 1,000% what they said 15 months ago, 18 months ago. And Shane admitted that today. Mm-hmm. He's like, I know what it looks like. And I didn't hear the answer. To me, the answer was just kind of like a shrug of a shoulder type of answer. I didn't hear clear-ish plan. And for Shane, it's weird because what's Shane doing right now? He's got to get ready for the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah. He's got to put time into a game plan and play calling and Flacco. How much time does he have to sit here on the side and do whatever he needs to do with Anthony Richardson? Or do you just kind of chalk this up as, hey, man, for 2 months, you're on the back shelf. We'll worry about you in the offseason.
Matt would like you to consult your crystal ball. How do you envision this ending? How does Anthony Richardson ever come back? Were Colts fans sold a bad bill of goods? Did the front office really believe we could tally 10-plus wins into our playoff berth while also taking Anthony Richardson's development lumps? Or has his regression really been that big of a shocker for Ballard and company to quickly yank on this ripcord?
We'll start with the first one. How do I envision it ending? NFL life would probably tell me to bet on Richardson playing at some point again in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess it's going to take injury. I don't know if you lose 3 of 4 and Flacco just looks meh. Do you bench him? Do you go back to Richardson for the final month of the year? Again, just general NFL life would indicate a guy that wasn't the original starting quarterback is probably not going to go 9 straight games as a starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, injury, poor play, whatever. So I guess I'll bet on that, but I don't know. I mean, if Flacco plays this out, it will be one of the weirder Colts off seasons I can remember.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up here in 2025. Like, what do you do? I can't get myself to look at free agent quarterbacks yet. I'm not going there. I need 3 more beers before my day is over for that.
The quarterback they'll face Sunday night is a free agent coming up, by the way.
Well, there you go. Samuel Darnold, come on down. Maybe Jacoby Brissett. Don't they say the third time's a charm?
Oh gosh,
bring him back here for a third time. What do you do in the draft? You spending a day 1 pick on a quarterback? You spending a day 2 pick on a quarterback?
Well, you're gonna have to trade up if you do, right?
This is where we're in and when I have said this before about the awkward state of the franchise, Eddie, Andrew Luck was number 1 overall. Peyton Manning was 1 overall. Hell, Jeff George was 1 overall. We're not used to the 23rd overall pick starting at quarterback for the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that like as a rookie or as a young player.
Right.
You know what I'm getting at. Like a lot of the NFL is used to that. We're not.
Yeah.
So that's what I think makes this extra difficult of we don't really know how to react to any of this. And patience is probably a little bit shorter. Now, I do think there's a chunk of it that thinks, hey, I was good with the 10 games. I didn't love where the arrow was pointing, but I was fine with committing to Richardson. And I'm fine with committing to him, let's say, through the entire rest of this season. And that's my thing about going to Flacco is, to me, you delay potential clarity on Richardson, earlier clarity on Richardson. If you were to play him the rest of the season, and he continues to look like this, and the arrow is pointing down, I think I would have gotten here in January and said, this might be over.
Mm-hmm.
Or this needs to be over. Whereas now, I can't say with strong conviction that like it should or will be over. I think it's probably looking that way because, again, NFL precedent indicates no one's ever done this.
Right.
But like 10 starts, I can't get myself to just slam the door shut on that. So that's where I'm a little confused. Where Colts fans sold a bill of goods. I mean, yeah, winning and developing is at the same time is so difficult, especially when you have a quarterback as raw as him.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't. You can't have both.
It's very dreamy.
Unless you have C.J. Stroud or Jaden Daniels.
Right. But again, their college resumes would indicate otherwise.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add on to Matt's question?
No. Let's go.
Kind of want to go back a little bit because his question made me think of the time when I asked you, is this Colts team closer to that win-loss total that Vegas had them at a season ago compared to the 9.5 they were this year? That's kind of where my mind went back to because I asked you that. I can't remember when it was, but it was a while ago. It was a month or two. And now that's starting to come back into my mind a little bit.
Like you think it's a worse team than...
So it's closer to whatever that 5.5, 6.5 total with Richardson as the quarterback compared to the 9.5 that they thought they were this year.
Like, I hear you out, but I'm also like, and I don't know, weirdly, because I am pretty adamant, like the arrow is pointing down on Richardson. Like, again, if you were going to tell me right now where he's at, I mean, it's not been good, but I'm also like, he's 5-5 as a starter, and every single game's been one possession besides his first ever NFL game.
Yep.
So, like, I can't, for how poor his play has been, it's not like they're getting their ass just kicked routinely with him at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are very competitive in all the games, and they have a 500 record. And we attribute win-loss records so much to a quarterback. That's why I think, hear me out on how this week played out, Eddie. Do you feel like from the Dan Orlovskis of the world, the further we've got away from Sunday's game, the more those people have said, hey, can we all watch the film of this game? It's not 10 of 32 bad. Mm-hmm. Don't you feel like that sentiment has kind of grown?
Yeah, you tweeted that pretty much after the game. It was like you felt like it was his most accurate day, even though he was 10 to 32.
Did I tweet that?
I don't know if you tweeted it or said it, but
Okay. Look.
You put accurate incompletions after, I think, the first quarter or something. I can't remember.
Yeah. Certainly, yeah. I was like, wow, that's the most accurate 1 of 7 you're ever going to see, or something along those lines. However, he started the game. But I say that to bring this up, Eddie. The further you got away from the game, the old adage of "it's never as bad as you think it is" was probably true from Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of people were lacking around him, and again, he wasn't great, but still, a lot of people were lacking around him. So what bubbled more after the game? The tapping out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what bubbled more. And talking to my colleagues that were in Houston, because again, they're not watching the broadcast, so they don't hear the A.J. Ross update. They maybe even missed the whole tapping of the helmet. That was a zoomed in shot on him, and me at home. All of us watching it, you could clearly see that.
Mm-hmm.
So like that, and Richardson's words weren't heard in the Colts postgame locker room, right? Players aren't hearing what Richardson's saying at the podium 30 feet down the hallway.
Right.
So they don't know he said, "I was tired." They all could be like, damn, he must have got the wind knocked out of him, or must have got, he was holding his left wrist, if you remember, earlier in the game, kind of bracing himself on one of those falls. Maybe it was something along those lines. And, when he only misses one play, if you're a player, you're probably like, oh, okay, whatever. Whatever issue he had, he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then all of a sudden, they hear the tired quote. They see the tired quote. Ex-players hear it. Coaches around the league hear it. And they're pissed. And that to me became a huge deal, whereas his play was a huge deal in the box score, but then the more people watch film, it became a lesser deal. So that's why I just can't get away from this tap-out thing and that influencing Steichen. And I know he says otherwise, but was this just one more straw on the camel's back? Was this hey, Richardson is not meeting our quarterback standard? And I asked him specifically today about work ethic, and he said no, but the more I listened to him, the more I didn't believe him. Just professional, little things he's got to work on. I didn't hear a lot. I didn't walk away from that presser, Eddie, hearing a lot of, we need better quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
I heard more of, we need better C on the chest. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
Could be wrong, but go ahead.
Z Palm asks, if Shane Steichen calls a run to end the first half, are we even having this discussion? What if A.D. Mitchell catches that end zone ball from Richardson, or Dio runs it back? Poverty franchise does poverty franchise poop?
If Richardson stays in the game, is he benched?
Probably not, right?
I think Z Palm brings up an overall point that I think is worth mentioning. The Colts have lacked support around Anthony.
100%.
And if you want to speak just to Sunday, I thought, again, some play calling. I thought Joe Mixon over 100 again. I thought getting no hands on a CJ Stroud pass after the first drive. Certainly moments of truth. Your pass catchers, their chances to make plays. I'd argue outside of the Josh Downs play, I don't think one 50-50 moment went the Colts' way.
Nope.
So all of that. I tweeted out the Brian Flores clip from earlier this week. I'm watching the Vikings. I like to watch the opposing teams' press conferences each week. So I was actually watching it live yesterday, and I'm like, and they're asking about Flores, and they're asking about Richardson. They leave the question pretty open-ended to Flores, and he gives an answer, and then he starts talking about the play, about the tapping out play.
Yeah. And
for those that haven't heard the clip, he kind of deadpans and is like, "Did you all see the play?" Like, he sheds a 300-pounder, and really he scrambles for like 30 yards on the play just to get a no gain. And he's like, "I was tired watching the play." And I'm like, it was a reminder of, like, Flores said something to the point of, he makes a ton of plays. And I think there is a little bit of like the non-box score element to Richardson's game that, like, that doesn't show up in the box score at all.
Right.
It shows up as a no gain. But he sheds a would-be sacker that puts Matt Gay at 50-some yards. And now he makes it Jonathan Taylor draw and a chip shot field goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like those sorts of things I think is there. And that gets back to, like, wait, if Richardson's been this bad, why are the Colts having all these one-possession games with him? It's like, well, it's maybe not as horrific as we think. And again, he is trending in an accuracy arrow that is pointing down. I am not going to get away from that. But I also think there are some moments that maybe don't look as crystal clear as him chucking the ball to Alec Pierce down the field that is there in his game. And to me, I viewed this opportunity as the coaching staff to say, all right, guys, at the first sign of adversity, we don't jump off the ship. We condense the playbook. We get serious with him from a work ethic meeting standpoint, and maybe they've tried that, and maybe they now think, hey, he's just got to be benched. But that is quite the move to make, to go all the way there. There's a lot of collateral damage that can come from this. So we'll see how it is.
Tristan, I'm done, and burn it all down. That's the question.
Yeah, this general sentiment, Eddie, I think I've heard a lot in the last 24, 48 hours of just like, wait, we're here again as a franchise? We were told to be patient, and now, 10 games into it, are we back to where? Like, where are you? I would argue you're not even at 2022, because the nice thing about 2022 is you sucked so bad you got a top 5 pick. I mean, you're going to be drafted 19th overall. 17th overall. You know, it's just it's this stuck in the NFL purgatory, which, as I say a million times, that is NFL hell. So I understand there are some people out there that saying, Kevin, I'm just tired of losing. I want to win on Sunday Night Football more than anything. And I struggle at times with this with my fandom of like, what is the best thing to cheer for?
Right.
And I keep on coming back to the old phrase of, how do you get sustained success? Can you create a window of a run? Can you do that as a franchise? Can you do that collegiately? Collegiately, it's a little bit more difficult just because there's a recruiting aspect to it. Professional sports, you offer maybe a little bit more of a, hey, this player could be with you for 6, 8, 10 years. How do you get that window? Reggie Miller provided that for the Pacers. I would argue the Paul George era had maybe not 5 to 7 years of it, but had a good run of that. We'll see about the Pacers getting back on that track. Certainly, if you're a fan of the Indiana Fever right now, you feel like that is about to happen for your franchise. If I look at the top of the AFC over the last 6 to 8 years, the franchises that have done that have all drafted those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And they drafted them all over, to be honest with you. Whether you want to look at Baltimore, whether you want to look at Kansas City, whether you want to look at Buffalo, and they all came in different ways. I think all 3 of them. Didn't Baltimore trade back into round 1 to get Lamar?
Yes, it was the final pick of that GM's
18 draft.
Career.
Yeah, Ozzie Newsome.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, when you look at it, again, all 3 of them different college resumes. 7 overall for Allen, 10 overall for Mahomes. That's the path, and I just think when you go Band-Aid, you keep the bat on your shoulders too much. You're hoping for a walk. You're hoping for an air. And you got to swing. And that's why, again, in 2023, I was like, kudos to the Colts. They're finally swinging. And sometimes you swing and miss. But you keep trying. I mean, who was the Florida State kid that Buffalo drafted?
EJ Manuel?
Yeah, EJ Manuel. You swing, you miss. What do? A couple years later, you trade up twice, and boom, you take a chance on a kid from frickin' Wyoming.
Boy, did not have EJ Manuel name on the pod today.
And look how that worked out. Let's go with 3 or 4 more questions.
Okay, Jake would like to know if Joe Flacco being a win now move increases the likelihood of the Colts making a trade deadline move. It's in 6 days from today.
Yeah, Tuesday, the trade deadline. Yeah, I mean, I would say one thing that I asked Shane Steichen this on Monday, Eddie, when he uttered the phrase, we're evaluating everything. I felt dumb asking it, but I'm like, well, when he says they're evaluating everything, does he mean him as a play caller? I mean, seriously. I mean, so my question is this for you. Shane Steichen said on Monday we're evaluating everything. Is the only action that came out of that evaluation the benching of Richardson? What is there any? What else was evaluated, and what else, if any, was acted upon? And that's where this question comes into play. If it's win now, does that change anything? Does A.D. Mitchell play less? Does A.D. Mitchell play more? Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of like young guys that are playing on this offense. Like,
right.
Does Ashton Doolin give you a better chance to win now? I don't. Does Michael Pittman Jr., where are we at with the back? I mean, if you look at Pittman Jr.'s numbers in the last 3 games since the back, I think the catch rate is like 25% lower than it normally is for him. Does that need to be?
Does Will Mallory start getting more of the tight end reps?
Well, or less. I mean, he's the youngest one, and he just had a huge drop on Sunday. Like, again, I'm torn on all this. The trade deadline, they've never acted in a buyer's sense before. I don't know why I would say now, but it's a great question that Jake asks. I mean, nothing in the offseason screamed win now. Nothing. Not one move. So, yeah.
I know we've been talking heavy about Richardson, so let's go to Randall's question, kind of shift the mindset here a little bit. In regards to this Colts team, what has impressed you the most through the first third of the season, and what has depressed you the most? What needs to change as we move into the beef of the schedule?
I'd say from an impressive standpoint, individuals, I mean, Josh Downs, Pierce, Adangbo, Samuel Womack. I'd say O-line for the most part. I know Sunday was probably their worst moment this season, so maybe it might be hard to say that. I'd say Jonathan Taylor. What has disappointed me, certainly the passing offense, certainly the run defense has been the biggest disappointment, I think, easily.
Has Latu been a disappointment?
I probably would like a little more. I think his pressure rate, though, is a little better than people are going to give it credit to. But, yeah, I mean, I was probably, I don't know if I ever gave an official sack number on Latu. I was probably more in the 8 range. What does he have, 2?
Dose.
2 at the midway point. So, yeah, I mean, obviously 2 plus 2 is 4. Let's say it gets to 5 with bad quarterbacks in December. That obviously is not 8. But, again, consistent pressure was kind of where I kept on coming back to. But, yeah, probably a slight, if I'm grading him, I don't know, C-. If you're going off of an average grade there.
Is Rosie Bowen doing that kind of math yet? 2 plus 2 equals 4?
I feel like we're maybe not that direct, but if I showed her on the fingers, I think it would maybe work.
How high up can we count? Can you get to 10?
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah.
20?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
We can. Yes, we can count, but addition to subtraction probably a little bit down the road.
Final question is from Connor. Hey KB, hope you are well. There were high expectations that Shane Steichen could mold AR into a starting QB given his experience with Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts. Is Steichen not as good of a quarterback coach as we thought, or is AR, quote, a bridge too far?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of the latter, I think. I mean, no one in the NFL, I think, has encountered this. And is the offense more Herbert-centric? Hurts is a great thrower. I think a good thrower of the football. Like, is it a little bit, the big-time drop-back passing game, you got to, make multiple reads, et cetera, et cetera. Is that a little bit more equipped for I've always said this about what type of quarterback you need. I think you need 70 thrower, 30 runner. And I feel like the flip is there with Richardson. I mean, Mahomes is a thrower of the football. Yes, he can make plays with his legs, but he's a thrower. Herbert is a thrower. Again, he can make some plays with his legs, but he's that much, much more. So that's where I'm at. Anything else, Eddie, before we get to the Vikings?
Nothing from me at this moment. Examining the Minnesota Vikings, quarterback Sam Darnold is having a revitalization of his career, completing 67% of his passes, 14 TDs, 5 interceptions. Aaron Jones has been above average, 500 yards rushing, 4.8 per carry, 2 touchdowns. And then, of course, the big problem that is on the outside for any opponent, certainly when you face Minnesota, is Justin Jefferson, 41 catches, 646 yards, 5 touchdowns. And their defense likes to blitz and blitz a lot. They're led by Harrison Smith. Ivan Pace is their linebacker that you'll see a lot of in action as well. That is pretty much the Minnesota Vikings in a nutshell.
Eddie, great start to the season. Blake Cashman, their linebacker, got hurt, and their defense really has not been the same the last couple of weeks. I'll be curious how the mini-bye week, and Cashman's a little iffy for this week, how that plays out. TJ Hawkinson will make his season debut coming off the torn ACL. They get off to great starts, and I would call that one of the best environments in the NFL. Might be the loudest environment the Colts face all year. Prime time.
Skull
big time. Biggest blitz rate, again, highest pressure team in the league. No Christian Darrisaw at left tackle.
They traded for Cam Robinson.
Right, who I feel like is kind of a mixed bag. I know, he's probably better than what they've got, but that's where they're going there. They have struggled in pass protection there with Darnold. So I'm going to go 27-19 Vikings.
27-19?
27-19 Vikings. Stephon Gilmore game, right?
Oh, yeah.
Ryan Grigson game.
Would it totally shock you if the Colts came out and won?
No, nothing shocks you in the NFL. No. Again, I mean, there are chinks in the Vikings' armor, certainly. I think they have struggled here.
They've struggled the last 2 weeks defending the run.
Right. Again, defensively, it's like 15 points per game to 30 points per game. Average yards per play is up, I would say, significantly. You know, on paper, it's like, okay, if you can take away Jefferson, I mean, I don't think Jordan Addison's reached the point yet where he is like that definite complement to him. But I just, I don't know. I can't pick the Colts, and I've had a decent track record picking the Colts or against the Colts this season. I don't know where my conviction lies this week. I've been so caught up in the Richardson saga, but I'm going 27-19 Vikings.
I'm going one more point for the horse.
27-20?
Yep.
Spread's just under a touchdown, right?
I think so. I don't know. I've been so busy with all this AR stuff and Pacers and haven't even been able to look at the spread.
I'll end with this. It's just, I think the last 24, 40 hours, it's just a bummer of like that position once again has you asking the question of what is the plan? And I get it. The most recent plan didn't have a ton of great moments. But you were told and sold that there weren't going to be great moments early on, and you're going to have to live with some of the 60 minutes that look ugly, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And the benching in hopes of finding that light, there's just little to no precedent of that in the NFL. And in a way, I just think it delays the answer on Richardson and potentially delays the answer on Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, if you want to look at it in that light. So I know some people are a fan of Flacco getting a look, but to me, it just continues to stymie your franchise from finding the sustained success answer. And that, to me, I think is the goal that every franchise should have. And wins come off of that, then the ability to win games. Because if this was a win-now operation, they wouldn't have waited. They wouldn't have handled the offseason like they did, to be frank. So those are my thoughts. He's Eddie Garrison with Kevin Bowen. Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen, signing off.